Sandhya, we are live on Facebook at this point of time. I
We
will
can
share
see.
the links here. So, just to the benefit of people who have joined in, Bangalore Schools Education Initiatives is an offshoot of Bangalore Schools Group, which is a Facebook community that was formed in 2012 by Shweta Sharan. It was a community that was formed to help parents identify schools, help each other, and be a self help group. Over the last 8 years, we have grown to a community of almost 52,000 parents. Me and Sandhya, we help Shweta in running that community of this 52,000 parents, and we have mostly parents in the age group of 25 to 45. Uh, it's a very active Facebook group with almost 83% of our members regularly being active in the group. And we have spread across not just Bangalore, we have members from other parts of the world as well. It continues to be the one single community wherein parents look for advices when it comes to selecting schools, when it comes to education, be it be a school, be it be homeschooling, be it be unschooling. People kind of generally come and discuss there in terms of parenting advices. They come and seek opinion there, and members have been very, very helpful over the last 8 years, helping each other. We represent all the five pillars of education: the schools, the parents, the educators, the students, and the service providers. So it's a single platform wherein all of them come together and support each other in being a single community wherein we can help all of them. So that's the whole idea behind the Bangalore Schools group. Over the last 1 year, we have conducted two education expos. Very happy to see Vidya Shilp Academy and Prakriya, who've been part of the expos with us and supporting us on that initiative. Principal Talk is a series wherein we bring in the schools, where we can represent those schools into the larger community. We bring in the heads of the institutions, the principals or senior management who can come and represent their school and talk to us about their philosophy, their ideologies, their methodologies, and so the parents know firsthand about that schools, and that's the whole idea behind Principals Talk. This is the third in the series. We've already done two of them and were received very well. So this is the third in the series, and we are very happy to have Sudha from Prakriya and Radhika from Vidyasagar JP Nagar with us. So we have just another 1 minute to go. So let me quickly get into the introductions of this. Sandhya, would you want to say a hi to everybody before we start? We are ready to start now.
Good morning, and welcome everyone. Manoj, you can do the introductions, and then we can have the.
Sure. Okay. Uh, so let me start off with Radhika. Mrs. Radhika Reddy is an accomplished educator with a professional back experience of over 14 years in corporate and education sectors. Armed with a bachelor's degree in engineering, she has found her calling in education, where she brings innovation and passion to her field. Through her experience as a coordinator, center head, and vice principal across several prestigious schools, Radhika brings strong leadership capabilities to Vidyasagar Preschool. She brings with her the experience of curriculum development in education for reputed NGOs as well. As the principal, Radhika leads the school in implementing a comprehensive development approach to the students across grades. Her repertoire includes early childhood education, classroom management, teacher training, subject workshops, planning and implementation of curriculum, building teacher parent student relationships, and extensive research skill. With her innovative approach to child centric learning, Radhika maintains an effective balance between the students' day to day needs and helping our students in becoming a holistic human being. It's our pleasure to have Radhika Reddy of Vidya Sagar Preschool JP Nagar as one of our guests today. Welcome, Radhika, to the Principal Talks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manoj. Thank you, Sandhya, for having me here.
A passionate learner, Sudha Ravi has over 25 years of experience in the field of education. She started her career as a facilitator at Prakriya and held multiple roles as mentor, coordinator, and headmistress. Currently, she is a mentor for the coordinators and teachers of the pre primary and primary section. She created and co held the learning space and various programs in the primary section of Prakriya. Sudha Ravi is a storyteller par excellence and a math magician in her own right and has given shape to the math curriculum. Empathetic, she is also known as an exemplary mentor and a guide to many. She also strongly believes in integrating spirituality in the field of education. A great mentor herself, a great teacher herself. Very great to see you, Sudha Ravi. Welcome to the principal talk representing Prakriya Green Wisdom School.
Thank you so much, Manoj and Sandhya, and thank you, everybody. Good morning.
We are having our moderator, Sandhya Vishwan, who has been an educator for the last 20 plus years. She's a homeschooling parent and a mentor in terms of homeschooling and unschooling to many in Bangalore and outside. She counsels parents through her consulting sessions on how they can look at homeschooling, how they can identify schools which are right for their children, and how they can look at various pedagogies or curriculums for their children. She has been the director of Bengaluru Schools Education Initiatives and a co-founder of the company. She is also the co-admin of the Bangalore Schools Group, the 52,000 member strong Facebook community that is running this program. She is also a director of the Mudpie Education Private Limited. Great pleasure to have a good friend and co-admin of the Bangalore Schools Group, Sandhya Vishwan, to moderate this session. Over to you, Sandhya.
Thank you so much, Manoj, and it's wonderful to have two very experienced educators with us today on this discussion. And we will dive straight into the discussion that many parents are eagerly waiting for. So one of the most frequently asked questions in the group is, why should a child be sent to a preschool? Is it really necessary to send a child to play at school and pay for it? So many of us as parents and educators are aware of the developmental milestones, but do we really know the skill sets that are developed at this young age that we need to look into? So to start off, Ms. Radhika, could you please share what you believe are the main skills that young children need to develop and the main pillars on which the curriculum at Vidyasagar is built?
Yeah, definitely, Sandhya. Yeah. So I would just want to share, first of all, that all of us know that 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5, right? So all of us agree on to that. So if we have to add some value to a child, so early childhood is the golden age. So this is the age where we look at tapping on to the highest potentials of every child. So essentially at Vidyasagar Preschool, we believe in 6 major pillars. The first one is the cognitive abilities of a child. So the second one is the creative development. Then we tap upon the linguistic excellence, the socio-emotional development, the physical development, and then we tap upon the value education. So just to brief a little more about each of these skills. So when we talk about cognitive abilities, we just try to inculcate or design activities where we can tap on to the potentials on strengthening the reasoning ability, the critical thinking, the problem solving skills in children, and just to strengthen the cause and effect also in young children. So when we talk about the creative development, so along with introducing our little ones to music, art and craft and dance, we also have various opportunities wherein a child can showcase his talents or skills. So talking about our linguistic excellence, so all of us know that primarily schools look at the listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. So we also look at strengthening the comprehension and the vocabulary building in children. So we also hone the public speaking skills in children. So talking about our socio-emotional development, it's unfortunate that most of the schools do not have a structured format for socio-emotional development. So, but this is the prime important thing for an early childhood phase. So what we look at is we try to inculcate this on a daily basis wherein children get opportunities to observe themselves, to understand their emotions, even before we expect them to handle them well or to regulate themselves well, right? So we look at creating opportunities where they can make in social connections so that they learn how to build upon healthy and positive relationships. And talking about our physical development, yes, primarily we focus upon the fine muscular skills and the gross muscular skills. So we have activities which can enhance the fine muscular movements like scribbling, doodling, coloring, painting, and all of that. And also we look at the gross motor development, wherein we introduce children to physical education, that's PE, and sports and games. And we also have yoga at our schools so that, it strengthens the endurance in children. And the most important thing is value education. So I think schools should pitch into this, because value education, according to me, is the need of the hour. So like all of us, most of us at least, live in nuclear families. So initially it used to be with grandparents, and it used to be with big families wherein values would just come in, right, by observing adults. But most of us are now in a scenario wherein there are nuclear families, both the parents are working. So actually, I think it's a responsibility of a school to pitch into this particular aspect, wherein we introduce values to them. So we at Sagar, we introduce values through model stories. Also, we have one very important aspect, that is through Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is more than religion for us. It's a whole different perspective at Vidyasagar Preschool, wherein, because Bhagavad Gita is something like which is called values of life. So we actually introduce being courageous. So Gita talks about being fearless, talks about understanding others' perspectives. So it's all about that for us. So it talks about a lot of values. And at young age, especially in early childhood, if children are introduced to these values, it gets into their habit system. So they just understand and follow what's right for them, and they'll be prepared to face any problem out there in the life. So that's what we believe in essentially. So we believe essentially to have a modern approach to education with very firm and strong cultural roots. Thank you, Sandhya.
Thank you, Ms. Radhika. I'm very glad you also touched upon the very ignored aspect, that is the socio-emotional part of it. Many adults themselves struggle with handling situations, and they are not able to, have a control or even regulate their own emotions. And I believe that, we need to start early working and helping children with the tools, because they still do not even have the vocabulary to be able to articulate enough. And thank you also for these skill sets that you mentioned. And I do believe that all major philosophies of early childhood education do plan their activities around these basic skill sets that you had mentioned, like the gross and the fine motor skills. And all learning environments have play activities or play as their central theme. Now, Ms. Sudha, along with these skill sets that were just mentioned, I understand that nature plays a very, very important role at Balambika, which is the pre-primary and grades 1 and 2 at Prakriya School. Could you share a little about how nature is incorporated into the Balambika program?
Yeah. So just to, go by the name of our school, which is Prakriya Green Wisdom School. The name Prakriya is actually Prakriti plus Kriya, which is actually processes in nature. So for us, we believe that nature is the best teacher. And in Balambika, which is our nursery program, what we really look at is how do we balance the being of a child, which is basically the essence and the nature of a child, with the learning program. And as you rightly said, Sandhya, because nature is the best resource for actually fostering this kind of a being. And we really believe that the child's being has to unfold, and it is our job to facilitate, the environment to kind of cater to that. So we do look at a social environment and a natural environment. So in our natural environment, we have really been fortunate and supported with an ecosystem which has got almost about 200 trees with a lot of about 30 species of birds and insects. And, we have a small little pond and our organic garden. So for us, we realize that this is the best place where children can actually be in nature and learn, because there's a lot of subconscious, or you can call it unconscious learning, which happens when children are in nature. It is like this whole thing of, you don't have to really teach them interdependence. They do see what is happening, the interconnection in nature. You don't have to really kind of teach them about diversity, because diversity, and if you look at complexity, is part of nature. So nature is definitely a big resource for us. And in terms of our teachers, the social environment that we create, the teachers are very warm and very responsive to the children in such a way that they create an environment where children, the joy of learning comes very naturally. And there is no fear, which we believe that it's a very important aspect of learning, that you learn fearlessly. So that's the fundamental principle behind our school.
So Ms. Sudha, are activities planned around being outdoors most of the time? Or
Yes.
Is there a lot of also facilitation and just freedom to be there, and then the facilitator tries to see where the connections can be made to whatever they are learning, because even the skill sets, as we just discussed, needs to be built at this age, right?
Yeah. So in fact, we have an integrated approach of emergent curriculum, wherein actually it kind of caters to the 4 C's which we look at, which is creativity, curiosity, conversation, and community. So keeping this in mind, the outdoors, actually, if you look at our buildings, they are very simply designed so that, the boundary between nature and the indoor is very limited. So children are encouraged to, be in nature and be with the community. So the emergent curriculum actually helps us to make these connections. And definitely, I think so we actually integrate the approach of playway method, the emergent curriculum, and also that age appropriate learning, because we believe that children learn at their own pace and at their own, according to their growth level. So we have the mixed age group in our school where children also learn from each other. We believe that children don't learn only from one person, they learn from each other and from the nature. So that's the aspect of learning outdoor and indoor. Of course, our learning program is also catered to learning the, language and math and things like that through a whole language approach.
Okay, yes. So the 4 C's that you mentioned actually, are the same as the pillars that Radhika ma'am was speaking about. So as I said earlier, it's the same skill sets that, and we also see, because Prakriya is lucky enough to have a large area as far as the open air is concerned. Now, and its space is a very, very important part, and how we utilize the space that we have is the important thing, especially in preschool, where there are more sensory activities that we work on, right? So Prakriya has that space. Now, not everybody is lucky to have that kind of space where we are building pre-primary or preschools as a program. Okay, so Miss Radhika, could you share your thoughts on the importance of having an indoor and an outdoor space in a pre-primary setup, and how is it at Vidyasagar that it is planned? I've seen Prakriya, but I'm yet to visit any of the Vidyasagar spaces. So maybe you can.
I'll explain, Kanya. So all of us know, according to the Reggio Emilia approach, that environment is the third teacher. So beyond the parent and the teacher, actually, environment also can greatly influence a child's learning. So we need to meticulously plan the indoor and outdoor spaces. So when we look at Vidyasagar preschool indoor spaces, or especially classrooms, we have different learning corners. So let's talk about the learning corner that we have in each classroom. So where we have some puzzles, some play equipment, some drawing sheets. So there are a lot of material which are handy and which are accessible for any child. So even during his scheduled activity, so once a child is done with the activity, he is all allowed to be free and he can just move out of the space and pick up an alternative activity of his choice. So that gives him a choice of choosing his own interests. So that will nurture their talents definitely. And the second important thing that I would like to mention about is the flow time concept that we have. So wherein it's just that the time wherein a teacher just sits down with all the children around in a circle, wherein they just build up conversations without any particular or specific objective. So this will help a child make social connections. So initially they feel secure in small spaces. So that's their own classrooms, and slowly they will adapt to more challenging environments. So that's how we are guiding a child to be socially, growing. And also when we talk about the sensorial corner, so each classroom is equipped with a sensorial corner where there are materials wherein a child can use all his 5 senses in the process of learning. So we also have one very special concept called the calming corner. So calming corner is again to cater to the emotional skills of a child. So it's just that, it caters to somebody, to some child to just reflect upon their emotions when they are upset, or when they have just had a conflict with somebody. We just want them to sit there and just think about how they are feeling, what has made them feel that way. So even we give some guidance, one-on-one attention is given to these children so that they acknowledge each of their emotions before learning how to handle them or how to regulate them. So even when we go to our outdoor spaces, so all of us know that structured environment and unstructured environment are equally important for a child's childhood. So because it has got, both have got their own pros, right? So when we talk about unstructured play, a child gets freedom to plan his own play. So they engage themselves with very, very minimal intervention of a teacher or any adult. So this will make them understand cause and effect. So this will make them take the responsibility for their own decisions, which is also equally important. So in our outdoor spaces, so we have the sand play concept. So children spend some time leisurely, they pick up their own play things and they have just free play. So both structured and unstructured play are given equal importance at Vidyasagar.
Yes, I can see that. Interesting that you brought up the calming corner. At Matpai also, we did have a calming corner where we did, as you said, help them to first acknowledge their feelings, which is what is more important, and also to help them with the vocabulary to voice what exactly they were feeling, because for them, for little children, it's just overwhelming and they don't even understand the difference between an anger or sad or they're upset, even happiness for that matter. Many children show it very differently. And yes, as you mentioned, even the outdoors free play is also very important for children, so that they make their own choices on what they need to do. I see a lot of similarity, but in very different ways, as Sudha ma'am and Radhika ma'am, you were explaining. Similarity as far as the adults are important just in facilitation and how they're able to guide these little children. So on that note, I'd just like to ask both of you, maybe Sudha ma'am can go first. On what criteria do you have the adults in the system? I don't want to call them teachers, because both of you have already, and help these little children. And as Sudha ma'am just told us, they are all developing at different paces at this small age. After they're 6, most of them are on the same path. So how do you identify and how can you find the right adults in the system? Would you be able to just touch on that, Sudha ma'am first, and then I'll come to you, Radhika ma'am.
I think one criteria which is topmost in the facilitators among the Balambika group is the enthusiasm and the passion, one, to be with children and to really observe them, to learn. I think that is something which is really topmost. I mean, irrespective of what qualification or what background it is, I think it is the joy that they have when they interact with children that really comes alive. And of course, the willingness to learn, learn, one, of course, research about how do children naturally learn, and also look at milestones of learning, but also to actually learn from observation of different styles of learning. Because in emergent curriculum, especially what we follow in Balambika, one quality of the teacher is the ability to stand back, reflect, and see how each child approaches the learning, and not to really just feed them with information, because there's also an information age where children are looking for instant gratification. So it's also about watching children, looking at how do they learn, and facilitating the process and the ability to reflect along with them. And another thing which we really believe in Prakriya is the teachers go through self-level exploration work. Every year they go through it, because we believe that when we are interacting with children so closely, what, the things that we believe, the patterns that we carry, the baggage that we carry do spill, whether consciously or unconsciously. So working with ourselves is a very important factor for all the teachers, and it's kind of mandatory for us. And we do see, we call it the process work, which really helps all our teachers to look at what kind of, what comes in their way of their flow, or what really is something that is coming as a baggage into their, the lens through which they're looking at the world, a whole lot of things. So definitely these are the criteria that we look at the teachers. We call them the facilitators, because we believe children learn on their own if you facilitate the right space and the right process. Yeah.
Right. I agree. So there are maybe lack of a better word, training sessions, or is this process just sessions that the facilitators have over the year, or are there also training sessions for the facilitators, ma'am, at Prakriya?
Yeah, so we have two kind of the workshops that teachers go through. One, of course, is a self-level, where we are looking at our patterns and we're looking at what I just spoke about, self-exploratory. But we also have continuous workshops, both held in school and outside, to look at the kind of work that we are doing and the age group that we are working with. Especially with Balambika, we do look at early childhood and how does the brain work, and how do children naturally learn, the different styles of learning and the milestone. So these workshops are like ongoing. And just to add on, like how Radhika said, we also have the circle time, which is also introduced to teachers through workshops and by actually participating in circle times. So that circle time is like a mandatory part of our Balambika program. Almost every day they start with the conversation, and children are all excited to, just bring things to the teacher. So these are part of the process.
Thank you, Sudha ma'am. Radhika ma'am, could you touch upon how it is the adults in the system at Vidyasagar?
Yeah, so just to add upon to what ma'am has already mentioned, so all of us is really very important. All of that is really very important when we look at a teacher. So added on to that, so because we believe in multiple intelligence approach at Vidyasagar, so we want every teacher to understand that every child learns in a different way. So there are different learning styles as per Howard Gardner. So there are 8 different styles, like spatial, audio, kinesthetic, naturalistic, linguistic, logistic, intrapersonal, and interpersonal. So it is nothing like we have a tailor-cut curriculum wherein all of them will learn in just 1 or 2 approaches. So every teacher needs to have that patience to try to put across every concept that they are teaching, so that we reach upon to these different learning styles. So that's where every child will pick up in their own natural style, and that will make them confident learners. So that's what we believe in, that every teacher should be equipped with this kind of facilitation. Also, yeah, the liveliness that they have, these are all inbuilt qualities that we look at a person when we even consider them to be a facilitator. So children, as you know, are very, very vibrant. They are full of energy. So we being teachers should have that kind of zeal and enthusiasm. So I myself consider as a teacher first, and then, anything else. So this thing in you, that constant zeal and fire in you to learn more, to do more, to be with children more, should always be alive in any teacher. So that passion, that commitment, and that dedication is what we look at. And rest of the things, yes, with kind of closely monitoring them, observing them, guiding them, we can definitely train the teachers.
Okay, there is a question from a parent on this topic. So the question is, how do you work on upskilling the adults in the space after, they're already in the system, but as you know that we do keep working on our facilitators and anybody employed at a school or any organization. So the ma'am, would you like to go first on how upskilling happens at Prakriya?
Yeah. So when a teacher joins in new to Prakriya, we start, of course, with a whole lot of workshop which a teacher needs to kind of, know before she gets into a class. So starting like how Radhika spoke about the multiple intelligence workshop, or whether it is a circle time workshop, or it is looking at play as a method of learning, because very often play is considered as something which is a filling up of time. But how much of learning happens through play? We do have workshops on the emergent curriculum, on mind map, and a whole lot of other things. But this is a continuous process. And the other thing is we are also connected with Bhumi College, where they are doing a lot of research and study on sustainability and holistic education. So our teachers are also sent to Bhumi College on a regular basis, where they interact with people who come from diverse backgrounds and have conversations, attend workshop. So it is a continuous process. And it's not just for the teachers who come in, it is also for the teachers who have been with us for many years. And we also have something called the institutional mentoring for certain teachers who've been there for many years. So the investment in teachers are at multiple levels, starting from a newcomer till whoever's been with us for many years.
And a quick question also on that, with the pandemic and now everything moving online, obviously I understand that all the spaces, it's always been face-to-face workshops and training, but how did it work last year for you with the pandemic suddenly striking us and having to move all this online? How was that, even for the facilitators more than, you could touch about both, how it worked for the children as well as the facilitators. So ma'am, if you could just continue on that note, and I'll come back to Radhika ma'am on the same upskilling and the next. Yes.
So yes, it's not a pleasant situation to be for a school which is so focused with our nature and our ecosystem to be sitting in front of computer screens, because that's the last thing that we would have ever wanted. But in terms of our workshops, that has been continuing even online. So we've had continuous workshops online also. And teachers have been having workshops. Of course, since last few months, teachers have started coming to school at least twice a week. So they have the luxury, of course, with all the protocols and everything of the COVID. So they also have the luxury of seeing each other in person, and interacting and kind of looking at things in terms of planning, etc. So right now it is a combination for teachers, both of coming to school on a couple of days and also doing online. With children, of course, we haven't had the luxury of getting them to school, though they're really, really waiting to. If you ask them one thing that they want for 2021, they've all spoken, Auntie, they call us Akka. So they are like, when can we come to school? We just want to spend time. So that's something that they're yearning for. But definitely there has been challenges in terms of course, the classes have been going on online. We've had conversations. So we have teachers having conversation, because we realize children are going through an emotional kind of struggle also, because they're confined to their houses and with parents working. And it's not easy. Children who have been used to running in the sand and playing in the mud and climbing up trees to sit in the house is just not an easy thing. So teachers do have conversation, they do have their music class, they have their story sessions, they have games also, surprisingly, online. But it's not easy for them. And really keeping our fingers crossed that a time comes when they can all come back to school. So things are going on. for both teachers and children as such.
Okay, it is difficult for adults as well to be
absolutely.
stuck at home with multiple members of the family being online at the same time, and nobody has, even as families, they've not spent so much time together. It is often you go to work, you come back, then you are free, you can put your blocks in place, while now it's all just spreading across and overlapping each other, and nobody knows how to handle that even in the home. So that itself is a challenge along with that online. And with little children especially, we've been working so much hands on, be it nature or even within an environment, a structured environment. It's more of hands on learning that happens there, and then this is a big challenge. So Radhika ma'am, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, regarding upscaling the teachers with their, training programs, yes, Vidyasagar sponsors professional development courses for our teachers. So we conduct workshops so that if a teacher has the zeal to learn, and we are there, to support them. So that's promised. And also with respect to the glitches that we had with the pandemic, so all of us know that it has been really, really tough and hard, both on parents as well as on teachers, to handle these little bundles of energy, right? So when we initially started, all of this has moved suddenly online. Like we initially used to have just one environment to be controlled, wherein all our 20 little kids are sitting there, and we just have to control one environment. But here, like, we made it into groups of 8 each in one slot. So there are 8 different homes, 8 into 2, 16 parents sitting there with the children. So there will be distraction. There will be a lot of other elements which a teacher needs to take under control even before she actually starts doing the concept. And a lot of teachers would not be so very acquainted with technology on preparing the lessons or doing PowerPoint presentations and all of this. Yes, initially there were glitches, but the way the children have beautifully adapted to this change in the learning style itself is really, really appreciated. And we at Vidyasagar had a combination of synchronous and asynchronous classes. So synchronous is something like live classes, and asynchronous is something like, we have the pre-recorded videos, the digitalized lesson plans being shared, and we also have given materials for children because we need to grab on their attention, right? So teachers have gone more creative in creating activities where there is lots of hands-on materials. So they used to just pack everything in a box and give them month on month, so that stood as a motivational factor for children. So they are receiving something from the school and they would want to just use that. So they would just pay focus and attention towards class. So this worked very well even for playgroup who haven't even come to physical school even one single day. So we've even all the parents were a little skeptical initially on how my child would get adapted to this particular system. But yeah, by God's grace, I would say that all of this was beautifully handled with the commitment and efforts of teachers and collaboration of parents. So this is possible that we could run this academic year successfully.
Yeah, great. Okay, so they would be excited too. I didn't know they would be getting a box from school, which I know it's usually difficult, though it is available. A lot of things are available that you can do at home. It's the challenge usually comes when parents don't understand that the goal that you're looking at, or how do you facilitate. They are not used to facilitating at all. Parents tend to give instruction. That brings me to the other adult than who we have been speaking about, the parents. In the little years, the younger ones, these little ones have their parents also constantly with them, mostly parents or other caretakers. In your spaces, first maybe Sudha ma'am could go, how or what is the collaboration or the parent involvement that is expected, or that has to be done regularly? I'm not talking about the pandemic, but otherwise, how does Balambika work with parent involvement? You can't just put that as you're putting your child in school and then coming back, especially in the preschool or in the pre-primary years. So how does that work at Balambika?
So, I mean, not only Balambika, across the school, I think the three aspects of learning for us is the children, teachers, and parents, because they form an integral part of our, our learning program itself. So our association with our parents start right at the admission time, because there are a whole lot of engaging with our philosophy, our conversation, because we do not believe in, a kind of competition and acquiring more and more, because we believe that in that kind of a race, what happens is children either become very good soldiers who will obey, or they become rebels. So we do not want to look at that kind of a, curriculum where it is about following and only, complying. So we do have a day's workshop where we have engaged with the parents to understand what are their worldviews, what are their vision for their child, what is their lifestyle, what is their thoughts about what is a good life and things like that, and success and all of those things. Then we slowly come into the orientation aspect to tell them about what is a Balambika program, how does it run, in terms of I think my connection is becoming unstable, just in case. Okay. So, and so they have the orientation. Yeah. The orientation is also had with the parents to talk about the curriculum in terms of what happens with the learning program and how we really invest in fostering the being of the child. I think for us both are important, as much as we look at a fine balance between the formal and informal learning. The other areas where parents are a valuable support is when they come for the workshops, because we do have workshops almost, at least we try to have twice a year, other than some workshops which are done in Bhumi. So we look at parents attending the workshop, because these are the times when we engage with certain aspects of child and about learning and about, the whole thing of life skills also, because there are a whole lot, as I think as the time passes, we do see children also changing, coming from nuclear families and what they are looking out. So we do engage with parents, because we do not want children to get mixed messages. And the other aspect is also, since we are looking at a holistic kind of education, we look at what we eat is as important as what we learn, because we cannot ignore that aspect of a child. So looking at, food, which is not junk. I think for us, junk food and processed food are completely banned. So, but we do have to engage with the parents on these levels. So these are the workshops that we do have. And of course, the other parents are a big resource in terms of giving ideas on field trips, on sometimes just coming and doing story session with children. And we have certain times in the year when grandparents come. And I think that's something which really children enjoy, having conversation with grandparents about how their childhood was, what is the culture. And we really encourage children bringing in their culture back into their language, their lifestyle, and their stories. So I think parents do form an integral part. During the pandemic, it is of a different nature, because during the pandemic, besides the workshops that we have an orientation, parents are supporting children at home, because especially with very small children, they need to be kind of monitored with the computer and things like that. But parents do kind of support in terms of activities. Certain times what a child is learning can be taken back into the kitchen, or into the cooking or whatever. So we do see that collaboration. And one advantage, recently one teacher told me, was that, parents now know how we teach in school, so they know when not to intervene and not to interfere. So that's an advantage of the other not advantageous pandemic.
Oh, and I found a very wonderful note when you mentioned about the culture aspect, especially in Bangalore, a city like Bangalore. We have people from different various states, and even mixed, parents from two different states. So bringing in that point is a learning experience for all of them, for the others as well. in smaller towns, most have a similar background. So it is already well known. Again, when you said about the grandparents coming in again with nuclear families, they might be really excited to have them. Even if the grandparents are here as caretakers for them, mostly, it's unlike living in their space and having the children around. This is another space. So that would be really exciting for the children as well as the grandparents to build that bond, to understand who they are and where they've come from. Radhika ma'am, parent involvement.
About,
yes.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
As you were talking about the culture part, just to add that children are also they start interacting with people who help them on a regular basis, be it the gardener or the driver or the support staff who's helping. So in a way, they also have a worldview that the whole idea of dignity of labor, not getting caught with the hierarchy of it. Sorry.
And no problem, because I also am aware that at Prakriya, they are all referred to as akkas and aunties, and not really given terms that we use as distinct, separate individuals. It's a community that is a part of everybody. Everybody's part of that whole unit. Radhika ma'am, could you please just let us know how parent involvement at Vidyasagar?
Yeah. So all of us know that according to Maslow's hierarchy of educational needs, if an individual has to attain the self-actualization, that is being able to reach upon to his highest potential, they have to consciously and subconsciously move through different levels. So the base is being physiological needs. So after that comes the safety aspect, and then comes the love and belongingness, and then comes esteem, and then comes the self-actualization. So now in this whole structure, we can see that family plays a very important role in making a child feel safe, feel secure, feel loved, or feel belonged to. So only then a child would aspire for his educational needs. So parents' role in this process of learning is very, very crucial. So when we look at collaboration aspect, yes, I think we have moved far ahead in believing, from believing that learning is unidirectional. So it's not just from the teacher to the student anymore. So it has moved far ahead. So now learning happens from student to parent, parent to child, student to student, and back from student to teacher also. So collaboration is there between all of us. So we respect that collaboration. And just in case you ask me what is that support that you require from the parents, so the most important thing that we would look at is the mutual trust and cooperation, based on which any long-term relationship can be built. And one more hook is the mutual appreciation, that if a parent, just sends an acknowledgement or an appreciation, that really inspires a teacher a lot, and so holds good from a teacher to a parent. So in a situation like this, where parents have put in their heart and soul into facilitating this process of learning, a small appreciation from the teacher would also mean a lot to parents. So this mutual appreciation is really, really important, so that we can collaboratively, drive a child towards his learning journey. And one more very important factor is, because see, when you look at a child, teachers and parents are equally important for him. Over a period of time, they become the most important people in his childhood. So we should have mutual respect. So only then a child will understand how to build up positive or healthy relationships. So always having a positive anchoring is the crust. So when a parent is talking about a school to a child, so we always have to remember that we have to keep the anchoring positive, and so in vice versa. So these are certain things which I would, believe that would really help in collaborating. Thank you.
Yes, it's a team. It is a team of the adults, both parents as well as the educators or the facilitators in the system that's working. Now, on that note, we've been discussing so many different aspects of early years. Sudha ma'am, what what do you think? And this is a big confusing time, maybe our times or even the generation before. Nobody had to choose a school or a preschool or even a learning environment for children this young. Grade 1 is when, or first standard is when school actually started. What do you think parents need to be looking for, or how can they identify the right space that they can put their child in? How? Sudha ma'am.
Yeah, Sandhya, your voice was breaking, but I think I've picked up what you said. See, what you're saying is very right. Today's parents have, it's a huge task to choose which is the right school for my child. But if you ask me personally, I would believe that it's really important for the parent to know what is it that they believe in and what is it that they want for the child. Because unless a questioning and an articulation of what is good for them and for the child doesn't happen, yeah, we can really be bought by a whole lot of terms and jargons which a lot of schools can really put it up for you, because I think now it's all there and everybody can speak the right words. But the challenge is to really look at what will my child get in this place, and what is the kind of engagement as parents I can offer or receive from this place, because it is a long association. And I personally believe it is best if a child is there in a school through and through, because it builds, the child's roots are built there, and there is a relationship that is built in terms of a community. So it's not easy, but it definitely, there needs to be introspection with the parents, of course, because that's very important. And very often we've also seen that the husband and the wife have differences on what's good for my child. And we feel it's best that they really sort it out before they come and, engage with. So it is not easy, but definitely it's important.
That's one of the communication and the socio-emotional that and mostly parents, they haven't even thought that they are so different to each other as individuals, that this topic arises maybe when they're sitting at the admission with the admission counselor there, and both of them are looking at each other and wondering, this is my child too, I have my thoughts, and then maybe they need to go back and revisit on that. And you were also right, there's a lot of marketing happening about we provide this activity and that activity and that activity, that parents also don't want to be missing out on anything. They don't want their child to be at a disadvantage just because they've not chosen this, but they don't know what is the right thing to choose or what will work for them, what is the fit for them. Radhika ma'am, your thoughts on how can a parent, how can we make this a little more easier for them, and what should they look out for when they are trying to choose?
So the first thing that they have to look out for is whether their child is ready to go to a school or not. That's the first thing that they have to check upon, because every child gets ready to school at a different age. It can be at 1.10, it can be at 2.10, it can be at any age. So what you have to first do as a parent is just closely observe the readiness of your child, whether he is ready to be as a part of a school. So then comes the question of what is the right school for my child. So it's a very important decision for every parent. So please do your thorough research, because it's very important to understand the pros and cons of each school. Yeah, yes, as ma'am has rightly pointed out, introspection is one thing, like, seeing the pros and cons is the second thing. You take your time to do a thorough research and just don't jump onto conclusions, because it's a very, very crucial decision that you're taking. It shouldn't be like you put a child into one school for 1 year and then you see that there's something which is not working and you take out a child and experiment on a different school. This will affect a child, because the child would have, with lot of effort, would have got comfortable with one space, and immediately you find there is a fault and you move the child to a different thing. End of the day, we are affecting a child. So please take your decision wisely after thorough introspection. So that's one thing. Yes, marketing strategies will be there. I mean, it will be so tempting that you just, fall for certain things. But more than infrastructure or anything, you just have to look at what this child, what this school can do for my child. What is the value addition that my child will get by being associated with the school? Right? So this is something which a parent has to thoroughly investigate upon before deciding.
Okay, there is a question from Kritika. The question is, how is the next academic year going to be for your children? Are you considering the hybrid classrooms if schools open? Sudha ma'am, could you first answer that, and then maybe Radhika ma'am could
Yeah,
share?
I think across all the schools are dependent on the government guidelines. I think that is something which is sacrosanct, which we cannot compromise on. And interestingly, I was listening to an interview by the head of All India Institute of Medical Science about opening of schools. And one thing which he was saying is whenever the government decides to open up schools, I think what is really important is that do the schools have good ventilation, and nothing like having classes outdoor, because that, according to him, is a very important factor. So schools can only take a call according to the government guidelines. So we cannot take a call on our own as such, so I think that's where it is. But this was one aspect that is very important to look at, that does it have good ventilation, and of course all the other COVID guidelines. So we really wouldn't know as of now, to be honest.
Okay, Radhika ma'am, any ideas on Vidyasagar if at all the government allows schools to reopen by June?
Yeah.
Are you all planning anything that is a hybrid model, or do you all have any plans on that?
As Sudha ma'am rightly said, we are waiting for the government guidelines because we believe that they would take a right decision, whether it would be physical or it would be offline, or it's a combination of both, or if it's hybrid or whatever. It depends on the situation. So we're just waiting for the government guidelines, and added upon to that, we would also ask for parental consent before we even try and implement something. So only if there is a nod from all the parental community, we would go ahead and take it forward for the next academic year. So just fingers crossed, hoping for the best thing to happen.
And so far, both are working on the online setup and seeing how it goes. If possible, and the government comes up with the rule, then you can probably see if a hybrid model or get back to the offline model like before. There was a question earlier for Radhika ma'am regarding the calming corner. So the question was, how would you ensure that the calming corner does not turn out to be like, you give time out or you're grounded, anytime there's a situation, you send the child there. I think maybe you can explain a little more on how that calming corner is used so that the child does not feel that. It's like it's punished, child is punished and sent to the calming corner. It shouldn't feel like that, and I'm sure that's not how it is. If you could just answer that for the other viewers, it has already been answered on our Zoom chat, but if you could just touch upon it for the viewers.
The guidance, towards a calming corner is not done by a teacher. Okay, so I will not be essentially asking a child to please go and sit in the calming corner. It is independently decided by a child. So we only have, socio-emotional wheels explaining them, okay, when you are agitated or when you are feeling frustrated or you are feeling upset, okay, just go there, walk in. They will just independently move out, sit there, just take out some time for themselves. That's the whole concept about. Like, you are in between an activity and you really don't have time to acknowledge your emotion. And that passes by. So you haven't acknowledged with what you have just felt. So this is something wherein a child can voluntarily move out, sit there, spend some time for himself and come back and join. So there are no questions asked. So it's just coming from a child. It's not coming from a teacher, right? And this is a calming corner with very due respect. So a teacher has respect when a child goes and sits there. So he can take his own time. Okay, and if he is asking for help, or if he says, ma'am, can I have you here for a minute, the teacher should be going there and, you know, contributing to it. So that's what we look at.
It's not that a child is being sent off there by the
Absolutely not.
adult. It is a child chooses to go there just to regulate their emotions, and then decide on does the child require help from an adult, or the child is ready to come back to the activity or whatever he or she was doing. Okay, so it's I mean, just clarifying for the person who asked the question, that it is not a punishment of sorts that the child is being sent out to. We are running out of time. We're almost done, close to noon. Okay, so just to put it in a nutshell, this is a very large topic anyways, and we have this constantly in our group coming up on how to choose a school, what, even for that matter, curriculum and boards come into the picture, even in pre-primary, which is not even necessary, as you can see, the experts have told you that working with them, they're being part of that system, and they are learning, as Sudha ma'am rightly said, they are learning. We are not teaching them anything. They are picking up from what is around them and learning on their own. So when it comes to choosing a school, as both Radhika ma'am as well as Sudha ma'am was saying, it's important that the parent does their homework, does understand what they look for as far as education or schooling is concerned, and see if it is the right fit, not just for the child, but for the family as well. As you see, it extends a lot of things that is being done in the preschool, or for even for that matter at school, in certain schools, extends to the family. And it's important that everybody is on the same page. And in that aspect, I think parents need to be doing their homework as to taking the time to find the right space that fits for you and your family and your child. So that's my on that. And we, please.
Thank you, Sandhya, for that amazing discussion. As you said, when, these are two diverse schools, two diverse philosophies, two diverse methodologies, two diverse approaches. But I think the whole thing sums up into what we all believe in, making it a better place for the child to come and be himself or herself. And it is great to see that nobody was talking about teaching, or nobody was talking about how the child will start writing, or the nursery rhymes, or ABCD, or 1 2 3. We did not speak about that at all. So I think that is a welcome change that we as a community is looking at. We as parents are looking at a school wherein a child is able to go there and be himself or herself, and comes out as a good human being at the end of it. So thank you so much, Sudha, for that insights. I've known you for quite a long time, and I kind of really know the passion that you bring into education. And I really take this opportunity to thank you for making two of my children the good kids that they are, and they're so independent. They're able to take their own life decisions, and I think that came from what is kind of believed in at Prakriya. And one thing that I've always tell people when they ask me about schooling is that the first thing that you need to learn from a school is humility. And I think that's what Prakriya has always stood for. When a child is able to appreciate the akka who's cleaning the washroom at the same level that he or she is able to appreciate the principal of that school, I think that foundation is really laid. Thank you so much, Sudha, for coming over here and giving us your insights in terms of early childhood. And we definitely look forward to a long, long collaboration with Prakriya through the Bangalore Schools Group and the Bangalore Schools Education Initiatives. A special thanks out there for people like Aparna, who has been supporting us for a very long time, and to Navya, who has been a member of our group also, and she's been reaching out to us as and when there is a discussion. So thank you so much for everyone out there. I can see Durga ma'am out there. I can see some of the other team members also. Devi ma'am has been part of our discussion last year also. So thank you so much. Radhika, thank you so much. Vidyasagar has been a very close collaborator with us. And a special thanks to you for coming on here, and great insights from your side as well. And a special thanks to Soumya and Shambhavi also, who've been with us and kind of discussing on and off on the Bangalore Schools group as well as BSEI. So a great discussion today. Thank you everyone. We've had almost close to 70 plus parents and educators in this discussions throughout in Zoom, and that's a very great sign to see that people are interested in what we are discussing. And in the Facebook group, we have been having quite a lot of participants as well. So thank you so much, all the participants who've joined us today. We will wind it up here. Thank you so much, Sandhya, for hosting it beautifully well and asking the relevant question. Thank you for all who are asking the questions. So we wind it up here. We will stop the Facebook Live at this point of time, but we will hang around for another few minutes just in case there is any offline discussions that anybody wants to have it. So officially, we sign off now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Manoj and Sandhya. Thank you, everyone.